Hello, friends. Welcome back to my channel, Patronosaurus Reads. I'm Katie, also known as Patronosaurus, and I read. Is that my intro? I don't know. Okay, I'm going to do my May wrap up. I know by the time this gets posted, it'll probably be like the third week of June, but I read 20 books in May, and I really want to talk about them and have them out there so you guys know my thoughts. So let's get started. I had 3 2-star books, so let's start with those. The first 2-star book that I read was The Gilded Wolves by Roshni Chokshi. Listen, y'all, it wasn't good. It was pretty bad. There were a couple of characters that I thought were interesting and were actually well fleshed out, and then the whole rest of them were not. So it's kind of an alternate history where there's magic. Don't ask me what kind. I don't know. I was very confused by the magic system. I don't know what to say. It was, yeah, like I said, the characters, for the most part, were not well fleshed out. I liked Zofia and I liked Hypnos a lot. I thought their characters were well done. I thought that they made sense. I thought their backstories were good. Well, Hypnos, we didn't get a lot of his backstory, but I wanted more from him and less from everyone else. And then the plot, because it relied so much on that magic system that wasn't well fleshed out, the plot was also not well fleshed out, and it was very confusing. It was lush, it was lyrical, it was beautiful, but it can't be just that. It has to have some substance, and I really didn't think that it did. So, Gilded Wolves, 2 stars. The next 2-star book that I read was Carmilla by Kim Teresi. It is a novelization of a web series that's based off of a novella that was written in like the 1800s. And it was originally an inspiration for Dracula. When Bram Stoker wrote Dracula, he was like, oh, that book, Carmilla, that's pretty good. I'm going to do my own spin on it. So it's about vampires. And then they made a web series that was a modern adaptation that I think was excellent. The web series is so good. The web series is 5 out of 5 stars. And then the novelization of the web series was 2 out of 5 stars. It was a web series kind of in the style of the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, so it's just a stationary camera at the same location the whole time, and characters move in and out of frame. And then the book was still basically the same thing. We didn't get any extra information, really, from people going different places and doing different things. It was all still set in the main character's dorm room, for the most part. Nothing really was fleshed out anymore. There was a non-binary character that was misgendered a couple of times. Granted, I had an arc from NetGalley, so maybe in the final copies that was fixed, because I saw a lot of people who had arcs complaining about that. So maybe they fixed it. I hope they did, because that's not cool. It just wasn't that good. Would recommend the web series. That was super, super good. And then my last 2-star book for the month of May was another pretty hyped one. It was Again But Better by Christine Riccio. So I didn't really know a lot about Christine as a person going into the book, not as much as some other people did. And I still could tell that Shane, the main character, was a really blatant self-insert. And I'm not saying you can't self-insert into a book. Like, that's fine. Tons of people have done it. But it was so blatant, and because everyone knows everything about her, it was so obvious. And the characters were so immature. It was really a weird dichotomy, because I thought the actual writing itself, like the narration, was pretty good. Like, I really enjoyed that aspect of the book, and that's why it got 2 stars. But the characters were so immature, and they're not YA. This is not a YA book. I would consider this new adult because the characters are in college. It doesn't, talk about explicit things or anything like that, but it is that older age group. And they acted like they were like 14. And there was some emotional cheating, which I personally don't have a big problem with in the context of the book, especially because it was not glorified. It wasn't like, yep, this is how this relationship should be. But I have seen other people having big problems with it, so that's something to know going into it. It was okay. I will follow Christine in the future, follow her books, that is, because like I said, I did enjoy the writing style, but I think this particular plot was not for me. So I'm hoping that her future books may be a little bit more interesting for me. Okay, let's move on to my 3-star reads. I had 7 3-star reads in May, which is fine. And not all 3 stars are equal. I'm going to tell you guys that right now. So my first one was probably more of a 3.5 stars, but I don't really rate half stars. It's just too much math for me. And that's This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. Let's talk about the big dick energy that Victoria Schwab has, using a quote from Vicious as the epitaph in This Savage Song. Love that. Love that. But I think the story of This Savage Song just wasn't for me. I don't know. It's just not my favorite. I should tell you what it's about. I'm bad at this. This Savage Song is set in a world where when people commit really heinous crimes or sins, like murder, violent but non-lethal crime, and then like mass murdery things like school shootings or setting off bombs and stuff like that, then monsters are created out of those crimes. So it's a dual perspective novel that follows a human girl who is kind of a monster hunter, and then a monster boy who has like the biggest heart, sweetest kid, he's the best. Loved him. August, loved him. And he is a monster who basically wants to be human. Like, he wants to follow more humanity. And it was just medium good. I thought, like, it took a long time to get really action-y. Once I was in the action, I was like, okay, like, here it is. But I felt like it took kind of a while. I don't know. Maybe that was just me. I did listen to the audiobook, and I didn't listen to it super consistently. Like, I would listen to it while I was getting ready in the morning for maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and then I wouldn't listen to it again for like another 4 days. So my enjoyment may have been on me, like, or my lack of enjoyment, I guess. But I just don't think it's Victoria Schwab's best work. And I've heard that Our Dark Duet, the second book in that duology, is not as good as the first one. So I'm considering just calling it quits with This Savage Song. I don't know. Let me know what you think. You tell me. A 3-star book that I read was 300 Foxway Holiday Piece. 300 Foxway Holiday Piece by Maggie Stiefvater. It's just a little, like, 2-page thing set in the world of the Raven Boys. I just wanted to read it, so I read it, and it was, like, fine. It's so short, it's like I couldn't even give it a real rating. It was 3 stars. It was fine. Then the next 3-star book that I read was Prince Charming by Rachel Hawkins. It's the Royals series. So the first book was originally called Royals, and it had that horrible, tacky cover. Ugh, it was so bad. And then they rebranded it. It has a new cover. It's really cute. And it's about a girl whose older sister is marrying the Crown Prince of Scotland. Here, in the real world, there is no Scottish royalty, but in this, like, alternate universe there is. So her older sister is marrying the Crown Prince, which means that she and her whole family are about to be in the limelight. So she goes to Scotland to basically have royal lessons to learn how to not embarrass herself in front of the press, which she fails at spectacularly. It was pretty cute. I don't want to tell you, like, who the relationship is with, because it's not like a love triangle, because I know some people really, really hate that. I don't mind love triangles, but it isn't even really a love triangle. It's just like, I don't know. It's basically you are led to believe that she will get with one person, but really she gets with another person. And I just felt like there was a lot of build up to it and then no payoff. So it's like, okay, we're building this slow burn, and then they finally confess that they like each other, and then the book is over 5 pages later. And I would have loved to sit in that romance for a little while. Okay, my next 3-star book was Tell Me How You Really Feel by Amina May Safi. It is about 2 girls who basically have a hate to love romance in high school. And it was cute. It didn't impress me a lot. I think it did a lot of that, like, miscommunications trope that bothers me a lot. I'm like, why can you not just talk to each other? But also that's how high schoolers are. It does take a lot for a contemporary romance to really impress me, and I thought this was just okay. But also female representation, love it. Like, that was great. Yeah, it was just fine. It might work better for some other people than for me. It just wasn't the perfect book for me. Okay, the next 3-star book I read was, I forgot I did this. So at the beginning of May, for some reason, I just really wanted to read some, like, smutty smut. So I did that, and they all got 3 stars or higher. Like, who am I? I have never really read smut before. And then here it is, Breaking Free, which is the 3rd book in the Masters of the Shadowlands series, and it's this series where, like, it's basically a BDSM club, and each book follows, like, a different couple and, like, them exploring that stuff. I don't want to, like, go into detail. It was fine. The people were fine. I read these because of the smut. The smut was good. It was fine. There you go. My next 3-star book, hey, I actually have the physical book, was Keys to the Kingdom, the 4th book in the Lock and Key graphic novel series by Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez. Joe Hill's the author, Gabriel Rodriguez is the illustrator. It's about this family that moves into a house that has a lot of mysterious magical keys, is basically what this series follows. And is it the 4th? Yes, it is the 4th. For a second I thought it was the 3rd. It is the 4th. It was just fine. I think by this point I was kind of getting frustrated that there's an obvious bad guy and nobody realizes that he's the bad guy. And then I think maybe at the end of this someone realizes it, or it's in the next volume, I don't know. I just thought this one was kind of medium. It was fine. The art is really good. Let's find a non-spoilery page. Sure. If you can see that. The art is really good. This is a pretty gruesome and gory series. There is blood and violence and ick and yuck. But it's pretty good. It's another smut book. Vicious by L.J. Shen. I read it because a lot of people have been comparing the romance to Carden and Jude from The Cruel Prince, but in, like, an office setting, basically. And it kind of was. It's apparently classified as a bully romance, and the guy was like, a jerk. Y'all, he's a jerk. Oh my god. The sex scenes were really good. I thought they were really well written, really interesting, but the actual plot I didn't like that much, so 3 stars. Moving on to my 4-star books, I read 5 of them. My first 4-star book was another smut book. It was the 1st book in the Masters of the Shadowlands series. Again, a BDSM club, a couple exploring what they want to do, and that's basically the whole book. It's pretty good. My next 4-star book is another book that I have a physical copy of. What? Who am I? It's Lumberjanes Volume 2, Friendship to the Max. This graphic novel series is so cute. It's so good. I love it. You guys, I love it. It's about these girls that are at this summer camp, and weird things are happening, and they're kind of trying to solve the mystery of what happens. It's so cute. It's so good. This series is just so good. It's so good. I want to order the next volume and read it. I just love them so much. My next 4-star book is, surprise, another smut book. I didn't realize until I was doing this wrap-up how many of those I read. It's The King of Bourbon Street by, I didn't look at who the author is. Oh, by Thea DeSalle. It's about a woman who's on vacation in New Orleans, and she ends up having a relationship with the owner of the hotel. What I really liked about the book is that the main female character is a plus-size woman. They don't show that on the cover. On the cover, it is your standard cover of a romance novel woman, but in the actual narrative, they make it very clear that she's plus-size. She lives her life the way she wants to live it. She doesn't care what people think about her, and her weight is never a big issue, which I really, really liked. So I think that's kind of what bumped it up to 4 stars. My next 4-star book is the second book in the Masters of the Shadowlands series, Dark Citadel. Again, BDSM club, good sexy times. That's really all I got. Okay, my next 4-star read was Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. I know everybody loves this series. My feelings on this book are complicated. I like Jay Kristoff. I think he comes up with really interesting stories, but I don't always love his writing. And I think that's why I do really like the Illuminae Files series, because I think Amy Kaufman brings him down a little bit, because his writing is so elevated. It's so crazy, and he's doing all these metaphors that are really extended, and a lot of people talk about the footnotes in this book, and some people love them, some people hate them. I was kind of in the middle. I didn't think that they added a whole lot, but I also thought it was fun, and I do like books that do different things and do fun things. But I don't know if it was necessary. Again, this is 4 stars. So that's Nevernight, 4 stars. Did really like it. Definitely going to continue with the series. I thought the first book was pretty basic in its plot, but I'm sure the second book is going to get more complex, and then after that it'll be even more complex. When the finale comes out in September, I think is when Dark Dawn comes out. I'm hoping to be caught up by then, but I have lots of books to read, so we'll see. So my first 5-star book that I read was Ruin and Rising, the third book in the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. If you are unfamiliar with this series, it takes place in this Russian-inspired fantasy world where the main character discovers that she's the chosen one, and she has these magical abilities. I don't want to give you too many details about Ruin and Rising because it is the third book in the trilogy, so if you haven't read it yet, I don't want to tell you too much. But I will tell you, I thought it was a massive improvement over the first 2 books. The first book was very middle of the road for me. I think it was a 3-star, like, meh. And then the second book picked up a little bit, plus they introduced Nikolai, my babe, love him, yes. And then the third book I thought really embraced the darker tone and the moral ambiguity, which I really like. That's why I like Victoria Schwab so much, because her characters are always kind of in the middle, and I thought Leigh Bardugo did a really good job with showing that conflict in Ruin and Rising. My next 5-star book was another smut book. Anyways, it's Pestilence by Laura Thalassa. This book has kind of been picking up steam. I feel like it's somewhat popular, given that most booktubers don't talk about smut books a lot, at least the ones that I follow, it's mostly like YA books. But Pestilence is set in kind of an alternate future, like a 15 minutes into the future kind of book, I think, where the 5 horsemen of the apocalypse have decided it's time. And so the first one to ride is Pestilence, and our main character, whose name I cannot remember, she tries to kill him in order to save everyone else. She knows which path he's going to be on, so she stays behind in her town while everybody else evacuates, and she kills him. He's dead. She did it. But he doesn't stay dead, because he's a horseman of the apocalypse, and he's immortal, which she should have known. She absolutely should have known that. So in order to make an example of her, he takes her prisoner, and she has to travel with him as he is spreading disease around the world. Oh my god, you guys, it was so good. What is this book? The plot was so good. The romance was so good. The sex scenes were actually not to my taste, but like they were well written. It's just not my thing. Like, meh. They were fine. But oh my, I never thought I would give like a smutty smut book a 5-star rating. But this book was so good. Who am I? Okay, my next 5-star book was Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is, I think, my favorite out of the Illuminae Files series. If you are unfamiliar, this is a sci-fi series set in space where in the first book, the premise is that this planet has been attacked, and so people are evacuating and people are chasing after them. And the people that are evacuating are trying to get to a jump station, which basically is a wormhole, like a human-operated wormhole, so they can jump to safety. And this book follows people on that wormhole transport thing. What's it called? A jump station. They're on a jump station. And it follows people on the jump station when other people from that same group that attacked the planet are now coming after them at the jump station because they don't want the people who escaped to actually be able to go tell anyone. I mentioned this in my Goodreads review. I said it was Die Hard in space, and I stand by that. It is absolutely, like, basically terrorists that are attacking this jump station, and just a couple of people are able to escape them and are fighting back. It was so good. This is, yeah, it's definitely my favorite of the trilogy, because I love Die Hard. I love the action. I liked the characters. If you are unfamiliar, I don't know how you could be because everybody talks about the series, but a lot of it is told in like these text message, email type things, so it isn't just a straight narrative that you're reading the whole time. It has lots of cool pictures. It's just really good. Highly recommend Gemina. It's great. It's Here There Be Gerblins, the first book in the Adventure Zone series, which is actually based off of my favorite podcast of all time. It's 3 brothers and their dad playing Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, I'm a nerd. Yes, it's very nerdy. It's also literally the best fictional narrative I've ever consumed in my entire life, and I'm so happy that there's a graphic novel series. This came out last year. The second installment is coming out in like a month. Ugh! I'm so excited. This series follows Taako. Yes, his name is Taako. Taako. Don't get it twisted. Magnus and Merle, the 3 characters in their Dungeons & Dragons campaign as they are going through their adventures. And then up here is Griffin McElroy, who is the dungeon master of their campaign. And every once in a while in this book, he pops in and kind of gives his 2 cents. And he's talking to the player characters. They really embody the spirit of the podcast while not keeping everything exactly the same, because I think that would have been really boring. So they did give it its own spin. If you are familiar with the McElroy family of products, you will notice that behind me on my bookshelf, I have several McElroy-themed items. And actually, as of right now when I'm filming this, tomorrow I will be seeing them live in Nashville, Tennessee. So I'm a really big fan. If you have never read any of these books, would recommend. Even if you don't know anything about Dungeons & Dragons, I feel like this makes it really easily accessible. And if you are interested in listening to the podcast, I would also definitely recommend that. It's fantastic. I love it. Okay, and my last 5-star book, the last book that I read in May, this is so many books, was not a smut book, but like there's some of that in there. And that is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I love Chelsea Dowling Reads. I watch her channel. I watch every video. The Hating Game is, I think, her favorite book of all time, unless it has been replaced by something else, but I'm pretty sure it's her number one, and I see why. It was so good. The romance is so good. It's a hate to love about these two people that work in an office. They work for a publishing company that used to be two separate publishing companies, and then there was a merger. And each one of the people works for the CEOs, who used to be CEOs of rival companies, and now they're CEOs of the same company. And their personal assistants hate each other. Except, do they? Really? The answer is no, they don't. It's so good. I don't want to give you too much, because I think this is another book that's good to go into not really knowing a whole lot of what happens plot-wise other than hate to love. Because I didn't really know a whole lot, and I was so happy to be surprised by the things that happened and to kind of be with the characters as they were on this journey. It's really good. Okay, that's it. That's all the books I read in May. It was a lot. I've been talking for a long time. I actually took a break in the middle to drink some water. So if the camera angle changed, or if I looked different halfway through, that's why. I'm Katie. This is Patronus Reads. Thank you for watching. I'll see you when I see you. Bye.